We began with what's on the line today in the NFL, our Saturday stakes. Big stakes in the AFC North. Today's pair of games. In the early game, the Ravens clinched the AFC North with a win or tie at home against the 3-13 Browns. Okay, one game back of Baltimore is Pittsburgh. Steelers hosting the Bengals tonight. Pittsburgh needs a Ravens loss in the early game, plus a win over the red-hot Bengals to clinch the division. Meanwhile, Cincinnati will be eliminated with a loss to the Steelers. With a win, they'll stay alive for the 7th seed, but need a Broncos loss and a Dolphins loss or a tie tomorrow. Hannah?
So here with all the important stuff you need to know going into the weekend is senior NFL writer Jeremy Fowler. Also, we have football analyst Sam Acho joining us this weekend. Hello, Sam. Good to see you. All right, Jeremy, let's start with you, though, because the Ravens' regular season success has not translated into the playoffs. So as we close the regular season, what are you hearing and what are they saying about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry?
Yeah, talking to people in the building, Hannah, they say the same thing. Derrick Henry is primed and ready. He's mastered every type of run that they have, including some of those shotgun formation runs, which took a little bit of time since he came from Tennessee, but he is all good there, running through arm tackles. And then they believe he's fresh, only averaging about 19 carries per game. They feel like they didn't overuse him, which is critical for January. And then also Lamar Jackson, there's been growth this year, not just on the field, but off the field as more of a vocal leader, I'm told. I was really getting the sense that he was reluctant in the past at that because he didn't want to be or appear bigger than the team. But now, multiple-time MVP, you're the quarterback, you're the voice. He has certainly embraced that. They've felt that behind the scenes this year.
That's really interesting insight. And listen, you got to run the ball and play defense right in the playoffs. Lamar is only 2-4 in the postseason. Sam, what do you want to see from him today as their heavy favorites going into the playoffs?
Well, I want to see run game and quick game, not just from Lamar Jackson, but from the Baltimore Ravens. Run game, meaning Derrick Henry. You brought him here to be elite. He has over 1,700 rushing yards, and he can take some of the pressure off of Lamar Jackson. Then in the passing game, I want to see quick game. I don't need to see too much drop back action, at least in this matchup. You could save some of that when it's necessary in the playoffs. A couple weeks ago when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, you saw some early success on run game, early success on quick game. Some of the drop back action, you saw a sack fumble. And so in this last matchup, run game with Derrick Henry, quick game with Lamar Jackson.
Okay, so that is the early matchup, the Ravens and the Browns. But boy, in this second game, so the Bengals have to beat the Steelers today and get some help to get into the playoffs. But what's the latest on a pair of injuries in the Bengals offense?
Yeah, Chase Brown, running back with an ankle issue. Hannah, this is going to be a close call. I'm hearing from talking to people in the building that it's expected to be a game-time decision, but he has felt better later in the week on that ankle issue because he did not practice all week, which is usually a bad sign. In this case, it did at least give him a chance to heal up a little bit, but he's probably going to have to test it pregame, see how he feels. Certainly not a slam dunk, but as was told to me, he is going to at least try to give it a go. He's hoping to play and get cleared, so we'll see. T. Higgins, more optimism here. Sources say he is expected to play today. He's had knee and ankle issues really for the last couple weeks. Limited last week in practice, balled out with multiple touchdowns. Same this week, limited all week, but he should be good to go. And this is maybe the top free agent in 2025, regardless of position. So he's still putting up big numbers.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns against Denver, including the overtime winner when he was questionable going into the game.
No doubt.
That was awesome. That's a story, obviously, we're going to follow in the offseason. But in the meantime, Sam Acho, let's go to the other side of the ball and the issues that the Steelers offense is having. They've lost 3 games in that brutal 11-day stretch. What did they need to do today?
Well, they need to protect up front. You're seeing so much of the stuff they tried downfield not working because of pass protection. Running backs aren't blocking well. Tight ends aren't blocking well. Offensive line isn't blocking well. And so if the pass game isn't working and you try to run the ball, well, teams know what you're going to try to do. They can anticipate your plays and sit on different routes. So for me, if Pittsburgh wants to get better and improve, especially the last several weeks, they need to be better in the pocket. Russell Wilson, yes, needs to be better, but the protection, not just from the offensive line, but when Darnell Washington tries to block as a tight end, when the running backs have to step up and block linebackers, everybody up front needs to help protect Russell Wilson. And then Russell needs to make better decisions.
Yeah, they had 520 yards offense against this very porous Cincinnati defense in their first meeting. But listen, this could be a shootout, right?
No.
So with Burrow and Chase, Steelers got to put some points on the board. Both these guys will be back. Thanks, fellas. Jay?
All right, Hannah, sports betting analyst Joe Fortenbaugh joining us. Okay, big day. big money. What are some of the plays that you like most today?
Let's start with one of the most bankable trends in pro football, which is the Baltimore Ravens in the first half. Lamar Jackson, in his career in the first half against the spread, 58, 33, and 2. That's 64%. There's no quarterback in NFL history that's had that big of a sample and performed that well against the first half spread. Also, keep in mind, Ravens, first 10 weeks of the season, 25th in scoring defense, 25th in defensive efficiency. Since then, they moved Kyle Hamilton to free safety, number 1 in scoring defense, number 1 in defensive efficiency. Play number 2. Their rival, the Steelers, plus 2.5. Another bankable trend for you. Mike Tomlin as an underdog in divisional matchups, 26, 11, and 1 against the spread, 70%. You go back 1 month when these two met in Cincinnati. The Bengals were 3-point favorites. Today, they're 2.5 in Pittsburgh. I don't think the adjustment's right there. This team has plenty to play for. 3 straight losses, all by 14 or more points. They need to get right before the playoffs start. And then finally, this guy right here, TJ Watt, over half a sack. The Bengals have given up 18 sacks in their last 4 games. Protection's been a major issue. They've given up 11 sacks in their last 2 games. And this guy right here is trying to close out the Defensive Player of the Year award. Patrick Surtain became your favorite at ESPN Bet just this past week. Don't think that that's been lost on TJ Watt.
All right, Joe, thank you much. You're going to see him back in a bit for more on how to bet tomorrow's games. Hannah?
Season as we welcome back NFL writer Jeremy Fowler. So the Dolphins have a must-win game against the Jets coming up. They clinch a playoff berth with a win and a Broncos loss to the Chiefs backups. What's the latest on Tua and this hip injury?
The latest is, Hannah, Tua plans to play should the Dolphins advance. But that's not a slam dunk because he has to be medically cleared on that hip issue. He has not been cleared yet. So I'm told really the setup is he needs to be able to throw and create torque from that hip. He's not quite there yet. So him telling the media this week, hey, I'm playing no ifs, ands, or buts if we get into the playoffs against Buffalo. That's a little bit of the competitive spirit. A guy who's sick of being injured, wants to play. And I still expect him to be able to go, but he would have to be cleared and get some practice time throughout the week before that happens. Jalen Hurts, similar situation. He is expected to play if they can pass into this. Well, they're already in the playoffs, of course, after this week. He'll be out this week, still in the concussion protocol, early stages. He's got to pass through the 5 steps. But talking to people in the building, they expect him to start the playoff game, assuming there are no setbacks in that protocol. It should be good to go. And then Aaron Rodgers, we've talked about him on this show very much before. His future in doubt in New York. He's teased that in his talks with Pat McAfee and others that this could be the end. Talking to people around the league, the expectation is he will not be a New York Jet because you have a new GM coming in with a head coach. They'll want to make a splash move. It's an easy situation to be able to just cut ties. There'll be some contractual obligations, but they can move on. And then, look, you have at least 5 teams picking in the top 10 of the draft that need a quarterback. The supply will not meet the demand in the top 10 as far as draft prospects. Somebody's going to need a good veteran, so there could be a home for him somewhere.
It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, right? Because he's sitting on $499. Right? Touchdown passes for his career. It's, might be a way to go out. So I don't know. It could be an upset tomorrow in that one. Biggest game of the weekend. Wow. Everything is at stake with the Vikings and the Lions. And then the future of Sam Darnold, who has rescued the Viking season with a J.J. McCarthy injury. I mean, talk about an intriguing storyline. What's the future for Darnold?
Well, the future is lucrative. I'm talking to teams around the league. They believe he's making more money by the week. And most do expect Minnesota to try to figure something out with his contract in the future. Of course, he's a free agent in March. It's interesting because the sense I got in the preseason leading into the year is that the Vikings were very much comfortable with him getting a big deal elsewhere, playing his way into money with another team because that means that everybody won and everybody's happy. But now it's gone so well that they might have to do a 2 to 3 year contract or maybe franchise tag him at $41 million per year as a 1-year placeholder that would still allow them to develop J.J. McCarthy behind the scenes. So they know they have options. They're comfortable with McCarthy starting next year too. They feel like they're in a win-win situation regardless of what happens.
Are we looking at top 10 quarterback money potentially? Or have you heard anything regarding that?
Yeah, I would say no. I think the sweet spot that teams talk to me about is more like that Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith weight class. So that's sort of like 3 years, $100 million, maybe a little bit more because of the inflation and the salary cap and then a better cash flow guarantees. He'd probably have a little bit of a stronger deal. But teams I talk to don't see him in that like $45 million, $50 million class that you see some of these deals go
Which is really interesting because those two guys resurrected their careers, much like Sam Darnold, who, by the way, it feels like he's been around forever. He's only 27 years old.
It shows these teams should have patience with some of these guys.
Absolutely. Jeremy, thanks.
Thank
Jay?
You.
All right, Hannah, time now to dive into that Vikings-Lions matchup with Sam Acho. Sam, give us your biggest keys for each team in this game. Start with the Vikings, please, sir.
Well, it'll be Sam Darnold's continued success, and specifically to guys like Justin Jefferson. Sam Darnold in this Minnesota Vikings offense has been playing excellent. A 9-game winning streak. The offensive line has been good, but it's been Sam Darnold making the right decisions down the field to his play-making receivers. Justin Jefferson, we talked about. We're going to go back to that earlier matchup from earlier in the season. This offense has been rolling, and oh, by the way, they've got healthier up front when it comes to offensive line play. And so for me, the key matchup, at least when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings offense, is going to be Sam Darnold doing what he's been doing the last 9 weeks. Now, on the other side, when it comes to the Detroit Lions, I'm looking at, yes, their offensive play, and yes, it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, but they're going to have to face a different challenge when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings love to bring pressure. They love to blitz. They love to force turnovers and sack quarterbacks. And so it's going to be how quickly can Jared Goff get the ball out to Amon-Ra and to Jamison Williams down the field and in the quick game to avoid some of that early pressure.
Which team do you think needs the 1 seed more, Lions or Vikings?
Oh, hands down, it's the Lions. And the reason why is because how banged up they are. This is one of the most injured teams in the entire NFL. Talking about guys like David Montgomery, Aiden Hutchinson. Now, some of these guys are out for the season. Others are hoping to come back if, in fact, they do have a bye week in the first round of the playoffs. Now, Aiden Hutchinson, he's been aiming for the Super Bowl. But Montgomery, there's a chance that rumblings that him and some other guys can come back as the playoffs continue. And so for me, the Detroit Lions, which are one of the, if not the best team, but they're battling injuries and battling. The defense has been struggling because of the guys that have been out. If they get that bye week, they can get healthier again.
That's my guy, Sam Acho. Today's doubleheader. Saturday stakes for real. Big stakes in the AFC North with today's pair of games. In the early game, the Ravens clinched the AFC North with a win or tie at home against the 3-13 Browns. 1 game back of Baltimore's Pittsburgh. Steelers hosting the Bengals tonight. Pittsburgh needs a Ravens loss in the early game, plus a win over the red-hot Bengals to clinch the division. Meanwhile, Cincinnati will be eliminated with a loss to the Steelers. With a win, they'll stay alive for the 7th seed, but need a Broncos loss and Miami loss or tie tomorrow. All right, we have both sides of that matchup covered in Pittsburgh, but prior with the Steelers, Ben Baby with the Bengals. We're going to start with Ben Baby. Ben, what are Joe Burrow and the Bengals saying ahead of today's must-win game against the Steelers?
Jay, nobody in Cincinnati is complaining about their current situation that needs the Bengals to win and also the Broncos and Dolphins to lose in order for them to get in the postseason, and that includes Joe Burrow. He said that they put themselves in that spot and they've got to control what they can, which is winning tonight in Pittsburgh. And when I asked Joe if this recent stretch of success feels like ones from previous seasons, he said it did. The offense is making big plays, it's able to come up clutch in key situations, and the defense, importantly, is creating turnovers. And when I asked Jamar Chase about the attitude of everything in tonight's game in Pittsburgh, a road contest, a divisional matchup with everything on the line, the sentiment that he gave to me was one that was shared by many players in the locker room that I spoke to throughout the week. He said it's just another game because it's the next one on the schedule, and if the Bengals win, they're going to start prepping for a potential matchup against Buffalo while they wait to see what happens with the other games on Sunday.
All right, Ben Baby with the latest on the Bengals. As for the other side of this matchup, let's send it over to Hannah.
And Steelers reporter Brooke Pryor joining us from Pittsburgh. This Steelers defense has faced just a murderer's row over the span of 11 days. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't get any easier, obviously, against Joe Burrow. So what are they saying defensively ahead of this matchup tonight, Brooke?
Well, Hannah, we've got a couple days left in the 12 days of Christmas, but it's been more like the 12 days of Festivus in Pittsburgh with a whole lot of airing of grievances over that 3-game and 11-day stretch and kind of the aftermath of that. The day after losing to the Chiefs, the Steelers came into the building and they had a very frank and honest conversation with each other, especially on the defensive side of the ball, pointing out all of the areas where they fell short in the Chiefs game and in the weeks prior to that. They've had some very spirited practices because Mike Tomlin wants to get rid of this stench of the last couple of performances. And as Deshaun Elliott told me this week, they want to go into the playoffs on a hot streak. So they are intensifying their day-to-day. that looks like some very spirited practices where there's been maybe a little bit of yelling at each other as they all try to get on the same page. But as Elliott told me, it's like bickering with your brothers. Eventually, you're going to hash it out and get on the same page. So they've been doing a lot of that, and we'll see tonight if the ends justify the means, because last time they faced the Bengals, they gave up 38 points.
Yikes, this could be a shootout. It has all the possibilities of that, and the Steelers could be anywhere from the 3rd seed to the 5th or the 6th, depending on what happens tonight. Brooke, thank you.
All right, Sam Acho is back with us. Sam, Brooke just talked about last time they gave up 38 points. Joe Burrow threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against that Steelers defense in Week 13. What adjustments does Pittsburgh need to make tonight to make sure that does not happen again?
Pittsburgh needs to finish when they get to the quarterback. There were so many instances in the last time where they played where Pittsburgh blitzed and brought pressure, but they didn't finish on Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was able to escape and find receivers like Jamar Chase down the field. That's part A. When you get to the quarterback, finish. Part B, it's about tackling. There are so many missed tackles, guys outside of their gaps, even bad coverage in one-on-one where the Steelers, who usually make plays like these in one-on-one, they weren't making. And so it's finishing, it's tackling. And the last thing is that a coach would always say, your 5-star players need to play like 5-star players. Guys like Cam Hayward, he needs to step up. He had a solid game the last time around. And so those are the names you need to hear a lot more of if you want to see your 5-star A players play in a big-time matchup.
All right, we'll see if that happens. Sam, you hang tight. Do not go anywhere. We got more for you. We mentioned the big stakes in the AFC North with today's pair of games. In the early game today, again, the Ravens clinched the AFC North with a win or tie at home against the 3-13 Browns. Here's Jamison Hensley with more.
I asked Ravens coach John Harbaugh if he has spoken to his players about how Baltimore can clinch an AFC North title with a win over Cleveland. Harbaugh told me, I didn't have to, but I still did. Harbaugh then pointed up to the rafters of the team's indoor facility and said, it's an opportunity to put up another banner. The Ravens are playing their best football of the season right now, but they insist they're not going in overconfident against the last-place Browns. Middle linebacker Roquan Smith pointed to Baltimore's Week 8 loss in Cleveland. Smith said, it's definitely at the forefront of everyone's minds.
Jamison Hensley, thank you. Back with Sam Acho. Sam, what do you want to see from Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in this regular season finale tonight?
Yeah, I want to see Lamar exploit the quick game when it comes to his passing attack. Lamar's been outstanding all season long, but he doesn't have to do it on the run. He can actually get the ball out quickly, get the ball out quietly, and avoid sacks, avoid forced fumbles. The last time they played, this is actually the Steelers when they played a couple weeks ago, the quick game worked, but also there was a game where it was a long rollout pass and it was a sack fumble. So quick game for Lamar, and then the run game with Derrick Henry. You brought in Derrick Henry in order to have success and take some pressure off Lamar Jackson. And so in this last Week 18 matchup, balance that quick game with Lamar Jackson, get the run game going with Derrick Henry so that when you get into the playoffs, you don't have to put all the pressure on your quarterback.
Sam Acho breaking it down. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.